Hello and welcome to another jungle video, and in this one we are going to be taking a look at how a challenger Nidalee player managed to get to basically 800 LP with an 85% win rate on the champion. And yes, that not only means getting to master tier, but then getting a further 800 LP while maintaining that win rate. That being said, once I started watching the VOD, seeing exactly what he was doing, I noticed how he was able to read the map, have a strong early game plan, find and play around the flow of the game, and always put himself in a position to carry his teams, and basically that's the best thing that we can impart to all other players looking to climb. How do you have a strong enough early game, or even if things don't go exactly as planned, you're still able to scale gracefully and control the outcome of the game? So if you enjoyed this video as well as the recent ones, please consider leaving a like and of course subscribing. Don't forget to head to the Patreon, the Twitch stream, as well as a secondary gameplay channel for even more League of Legends content. And now without hesitation, let's begin. And just before we head into the actual gameplay to look at what he's doing, this Nidalee Savant has Q-Max into E-Max, and then of course loves this Electrocute inspiration tree, and the reason you go for this is better early game skirmishing, the reliable damage from Electrocute, and because he loves to build Nidalee essentially like you would build a Karthus, that damage can really be run away if you have the perfect start. Obviously Nidalee can really giga turbo farm and objective control, so even if things don't go your way, he still loves to go this build. Skirmisher Saber, Runic Echoes, Dark Seal into a Mejai's, Sork Boots, and Oblivion Orb, not upgraded into the Morellos unnecessarily because Boris has no power in this arena. Follow that up with a Death Cap because why not, perhaps a Zhonya's Avoid Staff, and you are absolutely good to go. Although not that I really saw many full builds because he just takes such control over games, but the adaptive itemization of AP junglers applies to Nidalee as well. Right, hopefully that gets you pretty excited because the first thing they do at the beginning of every game essentially is looking for that roundabout way of a level 1 invade. That means if you start on blue side, taking your whole team to loop around the top and kill the top laner. If you start on red side, going down the bottom lane with your whole team, looping around and killing any support or ADC who might step out of bounds. Let's call it the long lane level 1. Now obviously getting your whole team to do this is kind of difficult, especially when people are, getting Kafifi breaks, maybe still staring at ob.gg so they can figure out which teammate they want to blame when they lose, even if it's their own fault, doesn't matter. But either way, this obviously has a significantly better success rate doing it on a top laner, and whether it works or not doesn't seemingly change the early game plan. So if you're able to do it, get a first blood, thumbs up, great job. If not, you simply do the early game plan as he does. And this early game plan is, as I have been saying in a lot of recent videos, more aggressive. That means even if you are a scaling farming jungler, you are still looking to get on the map as soon as possible, impact lanes, get leads, and essentially set yourself up to move around the map at a pace the enemy jungler cannot match. When you're Nidalee, this is very easy. You can also do this in lower elos with Rek'Sai or things like that. Of course, in this game, she is against a Rek'Sai. And as you can see, blue into Gromp, giving yourself a cheeky heal and throwing a spear onto the wolves. It's a little rude, but it gives you the talisman regen passive as you head to the red. Do that quickly and now immediately you look to gank. If you are on red team, that will of course be a top lane gank. If you are on blue team, that is as you are seeing a bottom lane gank. Going back and getting a scanner after that first blood allows her to scan the approach. The enemy bottom lane is not in position. Her bottom lane follows up. The first spear missed. It doesn't matter. They're able to kill the Thresh. It's a nice spear onto the Caitlyn, is able to have that elongated range on the W, a nice Q snap and then flash out. Understanding fully the damage and the timer on those animations so that she doesn't get hit by unnecessary tower shots and put into lethal, which would force her next moves to be kind of dangerous. So stick with me here, because you do blue, Grump, red, you are starting on the same side as the enemy jungler. Very often they like to start on the red buff, but because you do a 3 camp very quickly, it gives you prior on ganking the side lane first. Now I'm going to jump around a little bit through different examples and different avenues depending on if things don't go as well as they have like in this game. But in this case, the game plan is simple. If your top lane, for example, the side lane you want to gank, it doesn't go well, there isn't a gank available, you're not able to get kills, you simply do the exact same plan as if the gank went well, you just do it a little sooner. Once you've done that successfully or unsuccessfully, it's very important that your laners as well as you understand where the enemy jungler will be. In this case, you do expect a Hecarim to show up at this point. This also means because you showed on the map, the enemy jungler will know where you are and feel very confident about fighting a Nidalee level 3, level 4 on a crab, and of course because Nidalee doesn't have CC, it takes her much longer to secure. So what you do is Krugs, Raptors into looking to do the opposite side crab as long as you've reached level 4, which you should have at this point. From there, you can look to gank the other side lane, gank mid, do a bit of counter jungling if the enemy jungler shows up, or simply fall back to your second tiered Gromp and Wolves. So that is a lot of options, but like in the most recent video I did, if you don't have macro but instead macaroni, this can be difficult to sort of read in-game. So let's jump back to our Rek'Sai example where it makes it much easier to visualize. After taking care of business and destroying the enemy bottom lane, as they should expect of bottom laners, they don't deserve anything better, you know the Rek'Sai 100% should definitely be on the blue side of the map. It's worth noting, if we go back in time, you'll see that because of that level 1 invade, the Gangplank does his civil duty and puts a ward by the Krug pit. This means if Rek'Sai goes red into Krugs, you simply have to click on the map and say, hey, Rek'Sai's getting stoned, and now we can basically adapt our game plan accordingly. Now once you've done the Krugs, you could adhere to good practice, move on over to the river, hit the plant just to confirm that the Rek'Sai is or is not doing the crab. Then again, because it's Rek'Sai and a Scuttle Crab, it's kind of like voyeurism, so she doesn't check it, but she doesn't check it for those weird reasons. She doesn't check it because her bottom lane after shoving that wave will reset and spend the gold that she so graciously gave to them. And despite it being a Soraka mid against a Yone, because it's a Yone, I'm just going to assume the Soraka will have lane prior or simply rotate first. She's on the Raptors, Rek'Sai decides to have a venture over understanding these things, as does the Nidalee, but because she doesn't have smite, the Rek'Sai is able to steal it away. In a game where you do have lane prior or the enemy jungler is doing something else, you know, inting his team, you can risk going for the crab on the bottom side. However, the general principle here is to get that opposite side crab, but because the Nidalee lost her big raptor, she isn't level 4, the Rek'Sai has a whole bunch of things she could be doing, so Nidalee does the wolves to get level 4 first, and then goes into the river to take the crab. Now as I said before we got into this example, you need to read and react to the map to decide your next actions. Very simply put, Rek'Sai ganks on the bottom side lane, knowing full well that Nidalee's on the top side. Nidalee ganks on the top lane, knowing full well that the Rek'Sai's on the bottom lane. Hey, this is what happens in Challenger. When you have two good junglers, they can make opposite moves. So ask yourselves, in this situation, if you were Nidalee, what would you do next knowing that the Rek'Sai's bottom lane? Do you A, go back to base and say, hurrah, I'm amazing? Do you B, go to Lord Grumpulus, slap some cheeks and say, hey? Or do you C, go to the Rek'Sai's Krugs because you know full well she started on that side, she took the camp second, which means at 4 minutes they respawn, which means when you take them now, they will be elevated experience. Level 4 versus level 1, more stongs, more items, more leads. You leave a baby to tell Rek'Sai the story of horror, you go to the Raptors, you take the full camp. This will distort the Rek'Sai's ability to camp sequence. What I mean by that is, when Rek'Sai now goes back to base and goes to the top side, there's going to be a baby Krug that needs to be reset. That will reset the camp at that moment, whereas the Raptor camp was reset when Nidalee took them. So once Rek'Sai goes down to the Raptors, there's going to be nothing there. And it also means that those camps will respawn now with a huge time differential, meaning that when Rek'Sai goes back to the top lane a third time, the Krugs and Raptors might not even be up together. I guess that's just really a succinct and to the point example of why and how we counter jungle. And that's why I don't script my videos, because I never know when my brain's actually going to work. And yeah, everything's unscripted, I just turn it on and talk. As you see, she does the grump again before going back to base, because that again, second spawn, extra experience, and now that should tell you everything. She's not going to go back to the top side because there's literally no camps. She's going to head her focus to the dragon and bottom lane. And you can see if we go back to our red side of the map game, after doing the top lane drive by gank, the first one, going down to a Krugs and Raptors, yes, normally you're going to do the opposite side scuttle, but you should always read and react if there's a gank on the mid lane. If there's any sort of fight or trade going on, then maybe the enemy jungler shows up as well. React, get on the map, push the lane out, and now you can head to the bottom crab, take that, and again adjust your game plan. And you'll see this example of gameplay is exactly the same. She goes down, ganks the bottom lane, takes the Krugs, chooses not to take the Raptors this time because she had the gank on the mid lane, which delayed everything else, and of course the Heck Room is going to be resetting, and you don't want to be caught in their jungle. Fall back, take your Grump, take your Wolves, and reset. Exactly the same cadence, the same strategy, the same point as our first game against the Rek'Sai, except with subtle map read differences. I think the weirdest example I can come up with is that basically her game plan is the skeleton, and the skin may be different every single game, just like all humans are different. Anyway, so now you've seen both sort of games from both sides of the map play out with a similar game plan. The following point of the strategy to take you into the mid game and carry over this lead is that instead of simply leaving base and going to farm camps like the Rek'Sai, essentially you want to be on the map in some capacity. Enemy bottom lane pushed up, gank them. If your bottom lane is pushing up, hey, why not tower dive? You could also simply do the dragon if none of those are possible. What I will mention though is please be very cautious and careful about the enemy jungler, anticipate the pathing, don't, give shutdowns and die under the tower. But everyone's allowed one mistake, and when you have had such an amazing early game and you can do it every single game, usually it won't really, hinder your progress. However, good junglers like the Rek'Sai will punish you for this, gank, cause fights, knowing that you're not on the map and you can't actually interfere. That doesn't mean you can't do your blue into your wolves. You can rotate to counter gank on the mid lane after the Rek'Sai has left, maybe pick yourself up a kill on the enemy mid. You hold the mid lane a bit, and now because Rek'Sai will most likely go back, you can again look to impact the map. Yes, that means you gank the bottom lane on the overpushing ADC, you shove the wave, you do the dragon. If another dive presents itself, do it, but don't overgreed. And now at this point in the game, because you have first dragon, which is very important, you can now ping pong objectives. And that's a very big thing for you to do in solo queue because it tilts the enemy jungler, forcing them to run around the map with no real purpose, and makes your team feel very confident emotionally, psychologically, empirically, in your performance. Now to do this, the Nidalee player will very often skip these Krugs because they're out of the way. Once you've done the dragon, simply doing red buff and then flowing upwards into the herald is much more efficient than doing the Krugs, which are a little bit out of the way. At the same time, when you're driving by in the mid lane, if the enemy Rek'Sai, who's doing a very good job applying her own pressure, decides to gank again, you are right in the prime position to counter gank that and pick up an absolutely juicy double. Now you can argue, well, I'm not going to have the support in the top laner room for me. Hey, look at this clip from the coaching I did yesterday. That's in silver. They do rotate. And guess what? Even if they don't rotate, then it's just you against the enemy jungler and mid laner, and you should be able to pull this off given how fed you are. But the point stands, gank happening mid, you're in position to react, clean up, and now you can do the herald. Clear your blue side, reset, spend your gold, and now you can assess which lane would be the best to use a herald, plan it around your lane states, how many plates are left, which is pushing, which isn't, where is the enemy jungler going to be, and if they walk over a really nice ward, hit Rek'Sai with a spear exactly where you want to hit Rek'Sai with a spear, execute her, activate the herald, take that tower, clean up any kills, and at this point you should be in total control enough that even if you'll allow me to flip to the Hecarim game again, you don't exactly have as many kills or reactive ganks, you can still sequence upwards and use a herald on the top side. In the event that the game isn't so action-packed, sequencing your camps in order, like doing your wolves, raptors, krugs into a lane gank, all of these things are possible for you, but it's very much looking to get those plates down before 14 minutes to punch your gold up that much further. And even if good junglers or laners are against you, you get trapped, you maybe lose some Magi stacks, upon resetting, if you have a second dragon spawning, we want to control the dragon soul game, I love to head directly to the bottom lane, either a lane gank or through the tri-bush, just to make sure that I can either chunk them, burn sums, or ideally kill them at this point, so that dragon is more free than C9 in playoffs. And beyond that, you're looking at macro and how to close games out. I have multiple videos on not throwing, how to use macro, how to close with strong early leads. I will link all of those in the description, but I will close this video out with a few general tips based upon this Nidalee's game plan and playstyle. And that is, if you do the herald and you know the enemy jungler isn't in his jungle, maybe there's a buff up, don't forget to counter jungle that. This is crucial to your experience gain if you are not basically clinically farming like a Karthus with no soul. And secondly, if perhaps on your level 1 shenanigans, whatever your invade may be, you actually end up getting counter-invaded, you have two options. If there's no way you can push the enemy away from your red buff, simply go to your blue, do your gromp, and of course you can afford to steal his red and do the same game plan except with vertical jungling. If on the other hand you're able to push them off, this will delay the enemy Lee Sin. I highly advise doing as this Nidalee does. Take your red, hop over the dragon pit wall, walk into his blue where you know 1, he's not getting a leash, 2, he most likely would use smite a little too soon, especially in lower elo, so you can outsmite him, shove him away, take his gromp, gank the lane if you're able to, or simply apply pressure on his other side, and the guy's not gonna have fun. Not that this has much to do with this particular video, but we have done an invasive style jungling video with Nidalee that'll also be in the description. And I recommend that if you're feeling particular hatred towards enemy junglers and you really need to get some anger out, because the game from that video was actually kind of disgusting. But there you have it, a look at how all the strongest jungle fundamentals in the game allow someone to get an 85% win rate with Nidalee because he applies them flawlessly, understands the objective game flow, is able to take a strong mechanical champion and execute it perfectly, almost, and in turn gets such big leads by 13, 14, 15 minutes that he and his team are able to close very easily. If your brain is feeling kind of swole in a healthy sense, not too much, just the right amount that you feel you kind of big brain at the moment, please do like, share, and comment if you did enjoy and learn something. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification, as well as the Twitch page where I stream every week. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I will see you all in the next video. Yeah, you didn't think I was gonna say it, did you? No, I gotta keep you guys on your toes, a little bit suspenseful. We've been doing this a while, Sometimes we gotta keep it fresh, and yeah. And that reminds me of a funny story.